Since Wii U emulation is a thing now on Android, I was curious to see how it would pull it off. I didn't have super high expectations because I knew that Cemu was still an early release and that there's always optimization that goes into these things that will make them faster and better over time on lower spec devices. Regardless, it's looking pretty good so far, and it's impressive that such a tiny system is capable of emulating a Wii U. It seems slightly slowed down, but let's see if it clears up once we get past the flag line. Oops. What is up, gamer fam, and welcome back. Today, we're taking another deep dive into handheld emulation devices. Before I get too deep into this video, if you enjoy it, please remember to hit that like button, and if you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel. And remember, if you know somebody who likes this kind of stuff, share the video with them. This device was sent to me for review by a company called 2Retro, and I'm also part of their affiliate program now, so if you do decide to get one of these, please make sure that you use the affiliate link that'll be down in the description and in the comments. All the opinions in this video are my own, and nobody has reviewed this video prior to its release. The device comes in 3 colors: beige, white, gray, and black transparent, which is what I went with. Having purchased quite a few Anbernic devices prior to this video, the first thing I noticed when I pulled it out of the box was how big it felt. The box and packaging is classic Anbernic, clean and simple, yet somehow satisfying. And of course, I love that they include a screen protector in every package. I like the smooth design, colors, and the overall feel of the handheld is very premium. The cooling system works well, and I like that they did it in the same way they did for the 556, which makes sense considering they both rock the same processor, GPU, and have very similar features. Most of the differences with the 406 are going to stem from design, such as its 4-inch IPS screen, which, if I'm being honest, seems a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be.
That's what she said!
It's also missing the 6-axis gyroscope, which isn't a big deal to me personally. It's essentially got all the power of the 556 adapted to a more vintage design, meaning if you're looking for a device that's below $200, this might be the answer for you. The handheld definitely feels more comfortable in your grip, and the analog sticks work smoothly. The noticeable difference in size from the 305V, for example, is a welcome design change. I don't get the feeling that my hands are going to cramp up, and the bigger screen definitely helps when you're playing for longer periods of time. That extra grip on the back of the console really makes a difference for long periods of gameplay. Now to get to some of the juicy stuff. A lot of people are going to want to know, what is this system capable of? And that's what we're going to look at right now. I'm going to go through some of the systems that I think are the most difficult to emulate or require a lot more power to work. For 3DO, I used the Opera Core and RetroArch. Altogether, I tested about 6 different 3DO games on this device. I'm not going to show you all of them on here, but I am going to show you a couple just so you can get an idea of how well they run. And I mean, no noticeable frame drops or auditory issues, nothing really that I noticed that wouldn't have been out of the ordinary as far as the emulation itself goes, meaning it played just like the original console. While 3DO emulation has come a long way, it still requires a decent amount of power to get it working correctly. So it's not something that you're going to be able to play on the 35XX, for example. At least not well. But as you can see on here, there's no issues running 3DO games. Next up is going to be the 3DS. And the thing about the 3DS is that it's not super difficult to run either, but at the same time, it's good for you guys to see that this is capable of running 3DS games without any major issues. I didn't get into a ton of gameplay on here because I know this has been shown a lot in other videos about this system and others that may have similar specs to it. What's important to me is to make sure that you guys can see what this is actually capable of in case you're looking for a device that's capable of emulating things like Atomiswave, Naomi, GameCube, or even the obscure systems like Atari Jaguar. So we're looking at Fighting Vipers 2 here on the Dreamcast, and the reason why I'm showing you this is because this is one of the games on the Dreamcast that generally requires higher specs to play properly. Same thing with Virtua Fighter 3 TB, and a few other Dreamcast titles that wouldn't play correctly on an H700 chipset, for example, which is pretty much on all of Anbernic's entry-level devices. As far as GameCube goes, I tested several games on here, and none of them had any issues at all, none that I could see at least. I've never really tested Jaguar games before on a handheld device, but I'm pretty sure that it's one of the consoles that has a little bit higher end specs in order for it to run properly. To play Jaguar, there's a standalone APK and a virtual Jaguar core on RetroArch. A lot of MAME games run surprisingly well on this little console. Killer Instinct is kind of one of those MAME benchmark games when you're going with single board computers, and it tells you or gives you a good idea of how well the chip performs or the system performs if it can run KI. I did have the resolution up a little bit and it did seem to affect the FMVs, but the game itself seemed to run fine and without any issues. I think if I took a little extra time to set up this core all the way and dial it in, that this game would have no problem running on here. A lot of devices can run N64, so it doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but there are certain games that these devices can't run, and one of those is Killer Instinct Gold. It requires more power, and it runs really well on this device. So essentially, you should be able to run almost all the N64 library on here without any issues. And for those unaware, there's plenty of emulators on Android that will run DD games. So I was very impressed with the overall performance of N64 games on this console. Next up is kind of a no-brainer. This should run on most devices, but I just wanted you guys to see that it does run Nintendo DS without any issues as well. And obviously the device is using a touchscreen, so you can use those features with these emulators. Another big one that a lot of lower end devices or even some mid-range devices struggle with is Sega Saturn. The 505, for example, doesn't run Sega Saturn games very well. But this guy has no issues at all. Much like the 556, there's no issues when it comes to running Sega Saturn games. As far as consistent performance, my recommendation is to keep your system in high mode and have the fan on medium. Disclaimer, I'm no expert, but that has worked well for me. The other thing you might be concerned with is battery life. Now, I pretty much wrenched on this thing all day, setting it up in Daijisho and doing all kinds of other things, tweaking games and stuff like that. And I had no issues with the battery. The battery life easily lasted me all day. And when I say all day, I mean approximately 8 hours and then ended up about 30%. This is also with the screen brightness turned all the way up. All the games that I've picked to show you as well, I own physical copies of. I'm just gonna throw that out there. And as you can see, Wii has no issues on here either, which would be expected seeing as how GameCube runs so well. The last thing we're going to look at is a new emulator called Cemu, which emulates Wii U games. This is still an early release, but I was surprised at how well it seems to be working so far. You'll notice that the screen looks slightly stretched out vertically, and that is because I went with the lowest resolution possible in 4:3. Resolution on this emulator right now makes a huge difference, even the slightest change in resolution. So if you're going for a full 720, you're going to get hit in performance. I had a feeling that it wasn't going to be super optimized, but I wanted to see how well it would run. And although it seemed to be running a little bit slow at the start line, once you push past it, the game started to speed up and run a little bit faster, closer to full speed. While it did seem playable, there is still compatibility issues, and it still will crash randomly, but it's definitely worth a look if you're interested in trying to emulate Wii U. So after spending some time with this device, what are my afterthoughts? What you always have to ask yourself with these is, what do you want out of it? If you want a device that's going to be under $200 and it's going to perform well, this is definitely a good option. The screen is big, it's 4:3, and the games look really nice on it, even though it's an IPS screen. I know that some people would prefer AMOLED. It's a good enough screen that you get deep blacks, vibrant colors, and there's not a lot of light washout at all. If you want a device with a premium feel that's going to allow you to play up to GameCube and Wii games, then this is a good choice. There's a lot of nice aesthetic touches to it, and I definitely would have purchased this on my own had I not gotten the opportunity to review it. And again, this was a sample unit sent to me by 2Retro. Thanks for letting me. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and until next time, stay safe, and thanks for watching.